Today's episode is very personal. I'm sharing how one intense connection, which was my most intense and most important connection, became a great gift. Not just about love, but about healing, about feeling, about finding myself, and eventually accepting myself. Through losing what I thought was everything, I found something far more valuable: the true meaning of unconditional and conscious love. If you haven't listened to the prior episode, please refer back to the last one on Is Unconditional Love Really Possible? Welcome to Intentionally Single, Seeking But Not Settling. I'm Lauren Jean, your host, integrative wellness coach, and hypnotist. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and mind-body strategies to help you live life intentionally single and content while remaining open to possibilities. Unlike typical dating advice, we focus on personal fulfillment to attract genuine love. Join us to transform unconscious patterns and embrace your intentionally single lifestyle. Stop feeling deflated by the dating world and start prioritizing the most important relationship, the one with yourself. Welcome to Intentionally Single, Seeking, Not Settling. I'm Lauren Jean, your host. Today's story is different. It's about how a past relationship that changed my entire life, not because we ended up together, but because our connection forced me to face every single painful memory and emotion I had been carrying for my entire life. The connection between us was immediate, almost scary emotionally. There was immediate comfort. And you know those rare moments when you meet someone and it feels like your soul recognizes theirs. That's exactly how it started. Like I knew the type of person he was, even though we had just met. It was unexplainable. What I didn't realize then was that this wasn't just about a new relationship or falling in love. It was going to be about healing myself, my own heart, and being able to recognize my own soul. And this took years of going through the shit, even when I did not want to. It was forced on me. Our connection triggered every unhealed wound I had, and his also. The childhood trauma I had buried beneath work, the relationship patterns I'd been repeating, the walls I'd built to avoid feeling anything too deeply. Every trigger was not about him, though I thought it was at the time, especially in the beginning. Every painful moment was actually an invitation to heal something within myself. The intensity of our connection made it impossible to hide from anything emotional anymore. I want to take you deeper into this connection that changed everything. Some call it a twin flame connection, which is that rare meeting of souls that's meant to trigger your deepest growth. But here's what no one tells you about these intense spiritual connections. They're not always meant to last forever in the physical realm. Sometimes their purpose is profoundly healing. What started as an intense romantic connection evolved into something far more significant and something I treasure to this day. Every interaction seemed to peel back another layer of protective armor that I had built around my heart so strongly. It was as if the universe had sent someone specifically designed to trigger every wound that I needed to look at and everything that I refused to look at. As you listen to this, you might recall your own deep, transformative connection. Notice how your body responds to these memories. And perhaps you're becoming aware of how certain relationships in your life have served as mirrors, showing you exactly what needed healing. The true gift of this connection wasn't in the romantic outcome. It was in how it forced me to finally feel everything I had been avoiding, like the childhood wounds that shaped my attachment style, past relationship traumas I'd bury under being strong and independent and not needing anyone, the parts of myself that I wouldn't allow to feel worthy of love. Something really crucial about this journey, something that might help if you're experiencing a similar or had experienced a similar intense connection. While this relationship did have all the signs of what people would call a twin flame connection, I learned a powerful lesson about these beliefs. And this is where mind rule comes in. My rule number 8. Your mind will create evidence to support your strongest beliefs, even when they become hurtful and harmful to yourself. I found myself so attached to the twin flame idea that I was creating meaning in every single interaction, every synchronicity, every single moment of pain. And what started as a beautiful understanding of our soul connection became a way to justify staying energetically tied to something that I needed to naturally let flow through stages of growth and understanding for myself, such as letting go of all the past stories. I want to share a little snippet of how this twin flame belief was actually damaging my self worth rather than building it up. It was causing anxiety and stress and overthinking, things that I wasn't used to. However, relationship was always the stress point in my life. It was something that I hadn't been able to figure out. It was horrible. Also, it created this attachment to an identity that no longer served me. It was our past. I was holding on to it even though it had run its course. It served a very good purpose, but it didn't exist anymore. Through that old relationship lens, I was holding on to the damaged pieces of both of us. And I was reverting back to trying to hold on to what was comfortable rather than growing into a new me. A mind rule that I had shared in the past episode, which is the mind holds on to what is familiar. The deepest connection and teaching from this connection wasn't about twin flames at all. It was about my innate worthiness. Through all the intensity, the triggers, and the eventual separation that came between us, I discovered something really extreme. Something I wish I would have seen, but I had to go through this. And I was worthy simply for being me. Not because of our connection, not because of his recognition of me, but because worthiness is our natural condition. And as you reflect on your own connections, as you listen to my words, notice how your beliefs about their meaning might be affecting your own healing, your experience. Feel the truth that your worth exists independent of any kind of connection. Let yourself recognize that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is releasing the stories that we have created because we create them all the time. Something deep about this connection that reveals another layer of what unconditional love truly means. As I was working through self-discovery and healing, he was doing the same. Our connection was so intense that we became mirrors for each other's growth. We shared wisdom, breakthroughs that felt almost synchronistic in their timing because it was happening at the same time. And it was really captivating. And this created a beautiful but a challenging dynamic. We maintained a deep friendship after our romantic relationship ended, supporting each other's growth with a level of understanding that only comes from a similar experiences which we had. But here's where the real lesson in unconditional love emerged for me, is learning to hold space for someone you still have feelings for while honoring both their journey and yours and being able to separate. The feelings didn't just disappear because we decided to end the romantic aspect. They would surface unexpectedly, like waves catching me off guard. I don't know why I had such a hard time saying waves, but like waves catching me off guard, like at the beach, getting thrown down and pulled under the water. I had to learn something really nuanced, which was how to love someone purely while managing my own heart's desire. This wasn't about suppressing feelings. It was about recognizing them while choosing the higher path of supporting each other's growth and being there for myself and for him. As you think about the relationships where feelings can linger or where they do linger for you, notice how resisting these feelings often makes them stronger. So very true. What if you could hold both the love and the understanding that sometimes love means supporting from a distance, which could feel like pain? Feeling into the possibility of loving without needing the story to end differently or having control of what you want to happen. I want to share how this journey completely transformed my understanding of love, moving from fearful, conditional love to truly conscious love. It wasn't just a shift in perspective. It was a complete rewiring of how I viewed relationships and deep connection. Through this profound experience, I learned that conscious love exists between the normal parameters that we will usually assign to relationships. So when you love someone consciously, you love them through every life's circumstance, anything that comes. You love them through the arguments, through the triggers when they trigger your deepest wounds, through the moments that mirror back when you're avoiding in yourself. You love them through the emotional roller coasters of growth and change, through the presence of other people in their lives even, and through the times when distance is necessary for healing on both ends. This takes intense awareness and acceptance. And what I'll talk about in the next episode, which is referred to as conscious love instead of unconditional love, and something that I previously spoke about in the last episode. I'm going to keep referring to conscious love. Unconditional love is reserved for oneself, and the next episode will go into this even more. So, this transformation has made it impossible for me to settle for surface level connections anymore. I just can't do it. Once you've experienced the depth of unconditional love for yourself, you can see through the superficial aspects of dating that once seemed so important. And I'm really hoping that you'll be able to take January's episodes and really dive into this so that you can take the information and apply it to your own life and your own relationships as you see fit. Every connection is now measured against this new understanding, not in a way that creates these impossible standards, but in a way that honors this profound truth of what real love can actually be. And what's most incredible is how this connection became the catalyst for my complete self-transformation. Through his presence in my life, my entire self-concept shifted, and I thank him deeply for this. I really do. I discovered these abilities I never knew I had. I uncovered a sense of self-worth that had been buried under years of conditioning. And I found this completely new purpose in my life, which is where this podcast led me. He became the mirror that reflected back not just my wounds, but my potential. And I have nothing but sincere gratefulness for that relationship to this day. I cherish his place in my life and in my heart, no matter what comes our way or what we will look like in the future. This is why I can now live intentionally single, seeking but not settling. This really came from, I should say, this podcast really came from those experiences that I had and the journey that I was taken on to get to this point. I really did not think that this podcast would go in this direction. And if you've been listening since I relaunched back in November, you'll see that it did make a big shift. I never really knew that I would be here sharing these experiences and teaching about this because I hadn't even been there. I understand now that true connection isn't about finding someone to complete you or to make you happy. It's about finding someone who inspires you to get through the hard things together, both your hard things and theirs, and someone who inspires you to complete yourself. This relationship, even though it evolved beyond its original form, it taught me that being single isn't about waiting for love. It's not about waiting for love at all. It's about growing into that person who can both give and receive love. And I want to explain a little bit more how this understanding of love shapes everything that comes after, both relationships and in personal growth. When you've experienced this depth of real love, like I'm explaining here, even if that relationship turned into something completely different, you start to develop this inner guide for all future relationships. It's like having a new way of looking at possible relationships or kind of weeding out the ones that you know are not right. You begin to recognize the early signs of depth and authenticity that will develop within you while with a person. But more importantly, you can quickly identify when connections are lacking and that potential for conscious love is there. This transformation affects how you show up in all relationships. You can start to create boundaries not from fear, but from self-love. You communicate more directly because you understand that real connections can handle the truth. That's an important one. Real connections can handle the truth, no matter how hard they might seem. no matter how hard the truth might be. Most significantly, you stop trying to make connections fit into these predetermined boxes or timelines. This journey has taught me something remarkable about timing and about growth. And it's sometimes the people who teach us the most about love aren't meant to be our forever partners, no matter how painful that might sound or feel. But they're meant to be our greatest teachers. As cliche as that sounds, it's the truth. This understanding frees you from the pressure of making every promising connection into a long-term relationship, which is something that I had done in the past. I would always look into the future with that person. It's not about that. Instead, you can appreciate each connection for what it is, whether it lasts for a lifetime or for just a season, even for a week or a month. Through this experience, I've learned that being intentionally single isn't about waiting for the right person at all. It's about continuing to grow into someone who can recognize and nurture deep connections when they appear. Each day of singleness becomes an opportunity for self discovery rather than this waiting period that's like torture and loneliness. This shift in perspective transforms that loneliness into solitude and uncertainty into possibility. It is truly incredible. Understanding unconditional love for yourself changes how you love yourself. You begin to view your own growth with the same patience and acceptance that you've learned to offer others. Your journey becomes less about finding love and more about embodying it within yourself. I've said a lot today, and I highly suggest that you go back and listen to this one again. And as we wrap up today's deeply personal exploration, I want to bring together what this transformative relationship truly taught me about love. And what began as an intense connection that many would have called a twin flame relationship evolved into something so much more important. It was a masterclass in unconditional love, healing, self discovery for myself. Through this relationship, I learned that love isn't just about the moments of connection and joy and happiness and what I got from him. It's about growth, even when it feels uncomfortable, painful, sucky, really shitty, and like it will never get any better. My ex became the mirror that reflected back every unhealed part of myself, every pattern that needed examining, every wound that required this attention. And this was not easy. In fact, it was often painful and something I tried to avoid. But that pain served as a purpose, and I could not have understood that in the beginning. Biggest lesson wasn't about maintaining a romantic relationship. It was understanding that true conscious love transcends the form of relationships entirely. It exists beyond time, beyond space, beyond circumstances. It survives disagreements and separations and even the presence of other people in our lives, like I mentioned earlier. This understanding transformed not just how I view love, but how I approach all my relationships now. And perhaps the most important thing this connection taught me was that being worthy of love is not something that we earn, it's something that we are, every one of us. Through the triggers, the healing, the growths, I discovered that worthiness is our natural state. And it really took me a long time to really feel that and not feel like I was lying to myself. This revelation has allowed me to live intentionally single and not as a waiting period or looking for the next person, but a conscious choice to honor the depth of the connections that I now know is possible and that embodies in other people as well. And today, I can appreciate this relationship for exactly what it was. Not a failed romance at all, not even a little, but this successful lesson in what love actually means. I truly understand what that means now, and I hold it deeply in my heart for him, and I always will. It's because of this experience that I now can recognize authentic connections. I can maintain my strong boundaries and remain open to love while never settling for less than what I know is possible. And I invite you to do the exact same thing. I said a lot, and I want to thank you for joining me in this extremely vulnerable exploration of myself. Remember, sometimes our greatest teachers come in these unexpected forms, and what might feel like an ending, a painful ending, could actually be the beginning of your deepest understanding of love. Today's exploration of love through past relationships resonated with you. I really want to hear your story. Please email me at intentionallysinglepodcast@gmail.com. Share how a past relationship transformed your understanding of love, because your experience might help others recognize their own journey toward unconditional love. And I would love to share your story on the podcast. This episode came truly straight from my heart. And if it touched yours, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Each review helps other singles discover that their past relationships might hold the key to understanding true love as well. Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and share how this perspective on past relationships has impacted your own journey. Now, next week's episode is going to be a surprise. And honestly, I'm just as curious as you are about where we're headed. I have so many good things to share. After these deep explorations of unconditional love, there are so many freaking fascinating directions that I could take this conversation. And while I'm still letting the right topic emerge, I can tell you this: whatever I go into and explore will continue to challenge our understanding of love, about relationships, and personal growth. Because sometimes the most powerful episodes, they really come from allowing ourselves to stay open to what needs to be shared in that moment. And I know that it certainly does, especially when I get on the mic and I start recording. So I invite you to stay tuned to find out which direction we're going to go in next. Whatever the topic, I promise it will align with this journey of understanding love more deeply as we move through January and we prepare for a different kind of Valentine's Day, one that celebrates our growth and self-discovery rather than the relationship status. Until then, reflect on today's insights about how our most challenging relationships often become our greatest teachers. And remember, every relationship is either a blessing or a lesson, usually both. As we move through this month of understanding unconditional and conscious love, remember, this work that we're doing now is preparing us for a different kind of Valentine's Day, one where we can celebrate our growth and understanding rather than relationship status. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to Intentionally Single, Seeking, Not Settling. I'm Lauren Jean, reminding you that sometimes the relationships we think broke us actually break us open to deeper love. Until next time, keep growing, stay curious. Remember, every relationship is here to serve in some way. And don't forget to stay open to possibilities. I will see you next week.